Yeah,
Oh,
that's
I didn't say it in the film, but the movie in Memphis, Tennessee, where my friend and I had to sit in the balcony, that was the movie Patton, and that came out in April or May of 1970. So it's not as long ago as people would like to think.
Hey everyone, this is David Starr from Watch Your Pass. Today I'm talking with Jeffery Robinson and Emily and Sarah Kunstler from Who We Are, Chronicle of Racism in America. It's a fascinating documentary that's coming to the DC area on February 4th, 2022 and Baltimore on February 11th, 2022. We're going to talk to them right now. And as you're watching, if you could like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Also, a lot. Thank you. So thank you so much for joining me. This is Jeffery Robinson and Emily and Sarah Kunstler from Who We Are, Chronicle of Racism in America, which is coming to the DC area on February 4th, 2022. It's coming to Baltimore on February 11th, 2022. Imagine it'll be opening pretty much everywhere. It is an insightful, painful, and powerful movie that has such a simple setup, but then just kind of chronicles so much that has happened in America, both present and past. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
So I guess, first I want to start by thanking Jeffery for his many, many, many years of service, both as a defense attorney and also at the ACLU. I mean, that kind of a career is an amazing accomplishment, and also just, such a testament to kind of who you are. So I want to thank you for that, because that is, that on its own is amazing. And then this film is also amazing. But first I want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
So I always like to start my interviews off with like a softball question. So I guess, I'll just start with, I guess, how can we fix racism in America? Like, can you just tell me the answer really quickly? I'll just get it all done. I think the answer is it's complicated, because that's what this film shows. But I guess the first real question is, how did this film come about? I mean, Jeffery, I know you've been doing these kinds of talks for a while, and Sarah and Emily, I imagine maybe you had heard about these talks, or maybe you went to one and were like, oh my God, like this needs to be put out wider, right? Like not in just a small setting, but just a wider release. How did you kind of go about making this film?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what happened. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, like Jeff, and I hadn't heard about his talk, but I got invited to go hear one, and it was free, and it was convenient, and it was as a criminal defense, as a lawyer, we need to get credit to renew our licenses every few years. So I got credit for it. So I went, and I didn't know what to expect. And I certainly did not expect to leave feeling profoundly changed. But Jeffrey's talk changed my life. He changed the way I look at my life, the way I look at my role as a lawyer, as a filmmaker, how I interact with other people in this country, in the world. It had so many implications for me personally that I just wanted to figure out how I could help him share it with a larger audience. And I'm fortunate that in addition to being a lawyer, I also get to make documentaries, and I have an amazing partner in my sister, Emily, who is definitely, it's not a 50-50 partnership. Emily is definitely carries more of the work in our filmmaking partnership. And I called her and I told her about Jeff, and that was the start of our work together.
That is the best kind of partnership, by the way. The one where the other person does great work and does more of it. I love that. I love that story, because I think so many of us go to these types of talks and you're like, oh, that was really interesting. Like, I'm going to internalize that and use it to, like, I don't know, change my perspective, which is good. But you were kind of inspired and were like, no, this needs to go farther. Like, I need to make actual change because of this experience I had, which was, but that's an amazing kind of testament to your work, and also an amazing kind of feeling to take from Jeff's talk.
I think to the power of his talk, really. Yeah. It's not just a history that you sit there and you absorb. It fires you up. You want to go out there and share it with people. And just the way Jeffrey brings it all together, and the primary source materials that he brings to this, you want to run out to everyone you know and say, did you hear about this? Well, but you can't keep it all in your head like Jeff can. So it really helps to have this film as a tool to save Jeff's words, so you can communicate them to other people in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Yeah, and I guess so. Then, how did that interaction happen when you reached out to Jeff and said, "Hey, we want to make this into a film"? Like, were you hesitant? Did you think like, "Oh, this, he might take us not take us seriously"? Were you just kind of, or did you just say, "You know what, let's just throw it out there and see what happens"? Like, how did that connection finally happen?
We connected through we had people in common we had, in the legal community, and I reached out to Jeff, and he agreed to sit down for coffee with Emily and I. Well, Jeff doesn't drink coffee, so he had hot chocolate, and Emily and I had coffee, and we pitched him this idea, which at the time was an idea that was very modest in scope. It was, we really think we would love to document your talk and make a recording of it on film that's, a high quality recording. So, so we can share this and get it out with more people. We weren't even thinking initially, let's make this into a documentary film. We were just thinking of it as a document of something that was amazing that we wanted to share.
And then I guess the talk is kind of the I don't know, the anchor for this entire movie. But then what I love is you can then go out to get other stories kind of in the community or other historical stories. How did you go about finding those, Jeff? For those people that you had worked with before or knew, or did you just go out and say, you know what, look, I want to explore this thing we talk about, so let's go find someone who has a story about that? Like, how did you go about finding those additional stories to tell?
I think the only place that we went where there were really people that I knew was Memphis. I had connections to obviously the kids I went to school with and the people who helped us buy our house, and the other things that were shown from my life in the film. I had connections to most people in Memphis, but in the other places, we traveled to places and my presentation would happen, and we had folks that were reaching out to people in the community. Josephine Bowling McCall ended up talking to us mainly because, she knew Sarah and Emily's older sister. And so we just, were reaching out to people in the areas where I would give these talks. And I think they would sometimes see the talk, or people they knew would see the talk and say, these folks seem to be legitimate and real. And, we spent 2 trips to Tulsa, Oklahoma before, we got the privilege of talking to Mother Randall. And I think that was both brilliant and intentional on the part of the activists there, because it's like, who are you? And why, what are you doing here? And I think people had to see that we were serious about this piece of work. And when they saw that, they were willing to talk to us.
I know kind of one of the big things that I think struck me, and I think will strike a lot of people, is the personal stories that you also put in, Jeff. I know that you were hesitant to do that, but I agree with all of you that it does, I think, make the film much better. It lets you kind of see the real impact that it's had. So, I know you were initially hesitant. How did that convincing come about? And, how did you pick the stories from your life to then include in the film?
I think Sarah and Emily are very compelling people, and they knew more about film than I had. I knew nothing about film, and so when they're telling me this thing will make this better, they have an expertise that I don't, and I think the thing that had to build on that is the trust that the 3 of us developed, because once you trust somebody and they know more than you do about a topic, it's kind of like, well, maybe you ought to be listening to what they're saying. And other people were willing to tell these stories. Tiffany Crutcher and Gwen Carr, and the other folks that shared the tragedies that happened in their families and the things that happened. And I felt like if they could do it, then I could do it too. And the particular stories, the Brown versus the board and school desegregation was a key moment in America. And that's something that I had a connection to. And redlining and the supposed end of redlining. It didn't work that way, but the supposed end of redlining with the Fair Housing Act, that's something that I had a connection to. So those stories were relevant to the overarching presentation, just like the other stories were. And I think, and Sarah helped me with this, I think the thing that's important about those stories is the lack of uniqueness. What happened to me happened to kids and families all over this country. And my unicorn parents were just the two unicorn parents on Yates Road in Memphis, Tennessee. There were Black unicorn parents all over this country doing that same thing for their families and their children. So I think if there's any power in those stories, a lot of it comes from the fact that it's not unique. This was happening all over. This is just the one that you happen to see in this movie.
Which I think is definitely something that you get from the movie also, because you see all these instances of institutional racism or historical racism that you never, like I would have never thought about or drawn those connections. Like the part where you talked about New York kind of getting rid of slavery, I think it was like 1827. I was like, oh my, like it was that late. Like that kind of shocked me. I think it'll probably shock a lot of people who maybe aren't as in tune with history as you all are. So yeah, that's,
I didn't say it in the film, but the movie in Memphis, Tennessee, where my friend and I had to sit in the balcony, that was the movie Patton, and that came out in April or May of 1970. So it's not as long ago as people would like to think.
I'm sorry, you said 1870,
we are going
right?
to Memphis at the end of this month, and we're going to be in the Crosstown Theater, and I will not be sitting in the balcony.
That's good. You said 1870, right? That movie came out in 1870?
No, 1970.
That is insane. Wow. And it's just one of those things that is kind of a part of this country that I think people either forget or maybe don't want to recognize, as there was a scene in the movie that had exactly someone doing that, talking about historical reasons for conflict that just did not make sense. So I think the other thing that struck me about this film is you have this long, amazing journey that happens, and at the end, like, I'm an American, I want a quick answer. Like, how do we fix this? And there, I think that the lesson from this movie is there is no answer. You just have to keep working for it. But one of the things that I imagine will keep working and keep trying to kind of move the system along is the Who We Are Foundation that I think you all started. So can you talk about the creation of that and kind of what the goals of the Who We Are Foundation is and how that birthed from this great movie that you made?
I think this work is critically important to me and to Sarah and Emily. And when I was at the ACLU, I was in charge at the national office of the work in the legal department of the work on reforming the criminal justice system and racial justice. That was a great position, but I left that position to form the Who We Are project because I am convinced that the foundation that has been lacking from all of our attempts to remedy racial injustice in this country, the foundation that has been lacking is a foundation of what our true history is. If you just ask the overarching question, when you look at the gaps between white and Black America today, right now, this minute, why does it look that way? Is it that Blacks are lazy and haven't worked hard enough? Or is there some other reason? And if you erase the truth about our history, you can come to a conclusion that's completely false. So looking at our true history will give us answers that we haven't grappled with yet. And by doing that, all of us are going to move forward. This history, this isn't Black history, it's Black History Month, but this is American history. And this history was stolen from all of us. And if all of us have to reckon with it and get it back, that's what it's going to take for all of us to move forward. And so, that is a very general statement, but it has very specific meaning when it comes to policy decisions and positions that state, local, and federal governments take and that people take in their communities.
Awesome. And so the movie is going to be out, it's probably already out maybe in New York and LA, but it's going to be kind of a wider release this month after people watch it. Can they go to the Who We Are project to learn more about what they can do? Like, how can people get more involved after they see this movie and get energized by your talk, like Sarah and Emily did?
www.thewhoweareproject.org. The movie is the first thing that the Who We Are Project is doing in our goal to make sure that we correct the narrative about American history as it relates to anti-Black racism and the philosophy of so-called white supremacy. We want that to be something that we correct so that we can all reckon with the truth. This isn't about opinions. This is just about the truth about what happened. And if we reckon with that, it'll be very interesting to see where this country can go.
That is a very important point. I think we're all excited to see where this will go and where this project will go. So thank you so much for joining me. This is Jeffery Robinson and Emily and Sarah Kunstler, and the movie is Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America, coming to theaters in February. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Jeffery Robinson and Emily and Sarah Kunstler from Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America, which is coming to the DC area on February 4th, 2022, and Baltimore area on February 11th, 2022. And it's going to be opening pretty wide, so you should definitely check it out. It's a fascinating documentary that really looks at kind of America's past and kind of the things that are happening in the present and really ties those two together in some very interesting and fascinating and horrifying ways. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.